The actual best time to go is really when weather works for your plans and your schedule. Prices don't make you cry, okay? Maybe a little splurge here and there, but don't make you cry. And crowds do not ruin your vibe, okay? Some people are super claustrophobic and some people can just do crowds.
Hey y'all.
I'm Soph.
And I'm Nat.
And we're
the Travel Brats. Welcome to our podcast.
We've been putting the brat in travel
Since 2020.
and we're just getting started.
From hidden gems to world-class travel.
We've been sharing hot and not destinations from a bird's eye view and a party of two.
So what's on the itinerary today?
Hey, Travel Brats. Happy Travel Brat Tuesday. It's Soph
And Nat.
coming to you from the studio. And guys, we have started a travel tips series for you because we know that traveling can be really hard to plan before, during, and even after sometimes. And let's just go ahead and start with the story that inspired all of our travel tips in this entire series. Natalie, what happened to you?
So last week I was traveling and we obviously travel all the time. I deal with planes, trains, automobiles, we do it all. And I called Sophia and told her this story. And she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, we've got to do this series about all the different things that can come up and happen. And for me, this is just one of those kind of memorable, crazy stories. I was in New York City and I was getting to the JFK airport. And in New York, you have lots of different options. You can Uber, you can have someone drop you off, you can try to do public transportation. And this particular day, I decided to do public transportation because an Uber to JFK from where I was in Harlem was going to be like $70 to $100, which crazy. I was like, there's no way. And I was like, okay, I'm a New Yorker. I've been in New York, all different times in my life. I got this. So I planned ahead. I gave myself an hour and a half. Now I have TSA pre-check, so I typically don't worry about getting to the airport super early. If I can get there an hour ahead of when my flight leaves, then I'm usually good. I usually have tons of time to sit at the gate. Now I will say one little caveat, guys. Things are changing. They are closing gates way earlier than they used to. It used to be you really could get there 5 minutes before the flight was supposed to leave, but now they're closing 20, 25 minutes ahead, and they are strict about it for the most part. I've noticed that over the last year. So even with that, I've started to shift a little of, okay, I'm going to focus on getting there an hour before my gate closes, just to give myself that extra window. Okay, so I'm getting on the trains. Well, New York public transportation is very inconsistent. Again, why I gave myself an extra window. So I left with plenty of time to spare. The train that I was on was apparently not going to the stop I needed it to go to. And it was like, we were at 59th. I was needing to go to 51st. It said, the next stop on this train is Grand Central Station. I'm like, what? So I get off the train. I'm like, oh my gosh, because I was supposed to transfer at 51st to another train, which was going to transfer to another train. So it was all really specific. At 59th, I couldn't transfer to the train I needed to on 51st. So I call my fiance, Matt, and I'm like, what do I do? And so he's on his, Google Maps. I'm on my Google Maps. We're looking. He's like, okay, take this next train. That train will get you to this train. So I had to come up with a whole new plan. So first of all, now I'm like losing minutes, right? So I'm like, okay, all right, I got to get on the next train. It was the R train, okay? The N, the W, and the R all come in the same area. And the R was supposed to be there in like 3 minutes. He's like, okay, get down there. It's coming in 3 minutes. 3 minutes later, no R. I saw 3 N's and I saw 2 W's and no R was coming. And I was like, this is crazy. The R didn't come for like 18 minutes. And these precious minutes eating into my time. So I'm like, okay, I get on the R. Finally, I get on the R. I'm like, all right, I think I'm going to be okay. I just have to take the R one stop. Well, guess what? The train got stalled. It was stalled. I mean, this was a whole day, a series of unfortunate events. So it gets stalled. So that's like a couple more minutes. We finally get to, then I get on that next train. The next train is going to take me to what's called the air train. So you can get on the air train that takes you directly to JFK, but you still have to walk to get there. So I'm like, okay, I'm really counting these precious minutes and I'm losing them slowly but surely. And I'm starting to realize, oh, I don't think I'm going to make it. And of course, my terminal 7, the last stop on the air train, which normally if I had been the first stop on the air train, it would have been like a 5-minute train, turned into a 20-minute train ride. Okay, I'm trying to call the airport and I'm like, I need to talk to someone at the gate. I just need them to hold, because I was going to get to the airport like 10 minutes before my gate closed.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
it was that close. My gate closed at 12:40 and I was set to get to Terminal 7 at 12:30. It was insane. No one could get me to the gate. I couldn't get to anyone at the gate. They were like, sorry, we don't have that number. I'm like, you guys are useless. So I'm just like hoping and praying that I can make it. Okay, so I get to the airport, finally get into the terminal. I am running to security, okay? Thank goodness, no one's in security. I was like,
Oh.
this is amazing. I'm on the phone with Matt and he's like, Natalie, it's 12:36. You got 4 minutes. You can do this. So I go through TSA. Guess what?
What?
I get randomly selected for a full body check, taking off my shoes, everything. This has never happened to me in all my years of having TSA pre-check. I have never been randomly selected.
I
And
can't.
I'm telling this person, I'm like, guys, I'm going to be late. And they're like, sorry. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, you're the chosen one for the day.
Oh my gosh. I had lace up boots because I didn't expect to have to take my shoes off. So I'm like, okay, so I go through security. At this point, it's 12:40. Like we're already at that time. Realize my gate is gate number 2, the last gate. I'm like, what is it with being the last terminal and the last gate? I was like, these people are going to kill me. And I grab my shoes. I grab my luggage. I grab my coat. Sophia, I ran through the airport with only my socks on. I was, and I didn't care if anyone was looking at me. I was like, I am going to get on this airplane.
Yeah.
And I've never run through an airport barefoot in my life. So that was a first. But I was also like, I am not going to make missing my flight a first. I've never missed a flight. And I have never in all my years of flying been worried that I would miss a flight. So this was like so much intensity. I'm running and I get toward the gate. I see the gate. I start flailing my arms.
It's
And
me.
I'm like,
It's me. It's the one. It's the one whose name you've been calling. I'm here. I'm here.
yes, I was like, I'm going to Atlanta. I'm going to Atlanta. It's me. And at this point, it's 12:42. Okay. So I'm like, all right, maybe they could close it. I get there and she's like, girl, we were about to close. So it's a good thing you got here when you did. I was like, okay.
What you want?
She let me on, but get this, Sophia. She was like, I said, okay, but can I put my shoes on real quick? She's like, no, sorry, you gotta go. I was like, what? Okay, I'll tell you right now, I got onto the covered ramp, the connector from the gate to the airplane. I'm telling you, I put my shoes on. I didn't tie them up real nice, but I put my shoes on because I was not about to walk down the aisle of an airplane with no shoes on. I mean, talk about people staring at me and judging me. I was like, yeah, I'm not really ready for that heat. And I had time to put my shoes on. Like there was no worry. Because guess what? I got on the plane, sat down at like 12:45, and then we hear an announcement. We're so sorry. Our pilots are not here yet. Are you
That's
kidding?
so funny.
Our pilots
Oh,
weren't even here
no.
yet because of, I mean, they had taken, they had a driver, but there was a lot of construction going on. There was just a lot going on this particular day in New York City. And so we had to wait another 20 minutes for the pilots to show up. And then, of course, when the pilots get on the plane, they have to do all their checks and all these things. So we didn't end up leaving until about 45 minutes after we were supposed to. Sophia, I had an hour and 10-minute layover in Atlanta to get onto my next flight. Okay.
Oh, no.
So again,
You just
these-
kept your shoes off. Just
Oh,
kidding.
seriously. But these precious minutes, again, they are being eaten into. And I'm like, what the heck am I going to do when I get to Atlanta? Because the Atlanta airport, as we have discussed in previous episodes, biggest, scariest, this airport
It's the
is
worst.
huge. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do. And of course, I'm in the back of the plane. So I'm like, all right, we're just going to hope and pray. Like I got on this plane. We'll see what happens. Okay. So we land and I look at my phone and I have like 20 minutes. I have 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay, all right. Okay. I could do this. So I get off the plane and I'm on Frontier. So I'm in this area where like I walk off and I'm, getting off the gate and I'm looking around because I'm like, oh, all of this is Frontier. Surely this is the gift that I needed, that my flight is one of these flights because maybe this is just the Frontier section of the airport. And I'm looking, I'm seeing Memphis, I'm seeing Denver, I'm seeing all these different things. And I'm like, I'm not seeing Fort Myers. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep walking. So I keep walking. And apparently the Frontier area is like really far away from like everything else in the airport. And I'm like, I just need to find one of those things that says, because guess what? This is just, it was so many things, Sophia. My boarding pass didn't say what gate I was supposed to be at.
Oh,
And that's why
yeah.
all this, sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. I didn't know what gate I was supposed to be at. That's why I'm looking around like, maybe that's my gate. Maybe that's my gate. My boarding pass, which again, this never happens. I've always had the gate right there. It tells you. So
They
I'm like,
stopped
okay.
doing that. They stopped putting it on, like, you know how when you used to check your bags and they just, like, put it on and circle it and be like, "Oh, by
Yeah.
the way, this is your gate." They never do that anymore. It's
Oh,
so annoying.
well, that's another tip, guys. Like, just realize that that's not a thing anymore because I found out in this way, in this moment, and I'm like totally confused. Call Frontier again. And I'm like, can you just tell me what gate I'm supposed to be at? Again, totally useless. They were not helpful at all. So I'm sorry, Frontier. I'm telling you right now, like, you guys were not helpful to me. I
You
did
spit
all
on
of
me.
this on my own. I figured it out on my own and I'm proud of myself. But I start like running because I'm not seeing one of those arrival and departure like charts. And I'm like, these are supposed to be everywhere, all over the airport. Like, I'm like, why? So I'm like running. I get to the Delta section. Okay. So my flight got off at E41. At this point, I'm in the E20s. And I'm like, all I'm seeing is Delta. And I'm like, this is really weird. Like, maybe there's another Frontier section that I don't know about. Finally get to a spot. And I'm like in the E10s at this point. I get to a spot where there's an arrival departure thing. I don't know why it took me so long to find it. I was like, why is this so like hard to find? Guess what gate?
What? Oh, no. Was it not an E? Or was it like E45 or
It was
E41?
E41. It was
Yeah.
the exact same plane that I had just gotten off of.
No.
The exact same pilots, exact same flight attendants. All I had to do was just turn around and see that the gate behind
Run
me,
around.
Sophia, I was in this hyper intense, like my adrenaline was going. And so I was like, I just got to keep moving forward. And I'm laughing as I am running back and I make it to E41 at just the time that according to that they don't tell you the gate, but they'll tell you when the gate closes.
Oh, that's
Hello?
so
Like, come
hilarious.
on. Well, get this. As soon as I get to the gate, I hear over the intercom, we're so sorry for the delay. We would like to welcome boarding group number 1. And I fell into a chair. I just was like, this is so, because I was on the flight that had been delayed because of the pilot situation. So
Oh my
that's why,
god.
like, when I saw all these people when I walked out, like, waiting for the flight that I was on. Anyway, I got on my next flight. I was totally fine. I made it. It continued to be a crazy day. I mean, this was the wildest day I have ever had of travel. And I've seen some pretty wild days of travel in
Yeah.
my, so
Yeah.
there's the story
A
that
bit
started it all.
disorganized, I must say. I mean, you were just like, "That's it. I'm gonna sit here." And it's funny, I don't know, I'm trying to think if I've ever had an experience like that where I was confused and it was literally back right at the same terminal. Like, what are the odds of
What are
that?
the odds? I don't know that I have actually, I mean, maybe, but usually they'll say, like, if you're going to Fort Myers or if you're whatever, you can stay on the plane. Like, I've experienced that before,
Oh.
where they're like, if you're on the next leg, but of course, those were maybe the olden days of travel. But it was a series of unfortunate, maybe not unfortunate events because all's well
It
that
is
ends well.
very
But it
stressful.
was a series of very strange things that compounded, and yet I made all my flights. Like, that's kind of the craziest part of this, is that even with all of the things that happened, I still got on that plane. Now, I was sweating and out of breath for the whole time, but these are the reasons why we decided, like, hey, let's come up with some episodes where we talk about travel planning logistics, where the truth is I gave myself time. I did quote
Mhm.
unquote all the right things per se, but travel can still lead to unexpected situations. And as prepared as you are, that's always the best situation. But yeah, so we just wanted to kind of talk about a bunch of different things. And we'll start with some topics that are not necessarily related to this particular story, but I'm sure that everyone listening can relate to having stressful travel days.
Yes. And if you dig deep, this section I think will be slightly related, at least with the trains and the flights. So, guys, we wanted to start by just talking about how to get around like a local, perhaps. So, you guys know Natalie. She may not be a 365-day year local in New York, but she knows how the trains work, which I'm terrified of New York trains. I've taken them, but like I was one of those people that Ubered the airport. Now, I wasn't in Harlem. I was in, like, Manhattan. So, guys, we decided we were gonna talk about, travel tips, and we're gonna start a little bit with how to get around like a local. And, we'll talk about kind of the vehicles and the methods of travel. So, best overall travel, as Natalie mentioned, usually is train. Or trains. You guys got to learn the schedules. In a place like New York, they're a little bit, they're easy, but they're hard sometimes. So you got to be aware that sometimes they do get delayed. Sometimes they arrive early, which I experienced in Italy. So you just got to be, like she said, prepared, watching how you have your train app, you're watching the trains, you're making sure terminals don't change and all that jazz. Now, so best overall will be trains. Fastest long distance, obviously flights, you guys. We have mixed feelings about Frontier, obviously. It also depends on what airport you're going through because again, Delta, like Atlanta, they're gonna poop on everybody who's not Delta because it's the hub of Delta.
Yeah.
So, but again, there's a lot of other good. I mean, I remember flying American all the way to New Zealand and we like connected with Tahiti Airlines. It was great. So again, guys, we'll talk a little bit later in this episode or in the following ones on how to kind of figure out what the best flight for you is depending on where you're going. But most freedom would be car, obviously. And again, we've talked in multiple episodes and interviews with other guests about how cars can just make your travel free and flexible and easy. Again, they're more expensive to rent cars and do Uber. So it's give or take. What are you willing to pay for? What do you need? And then cheapest would be bus. I don't think either one of us are the hugest fans of buses, but short bus rides, I really don't mind it. Bus tours, I'm not a big fan of because I hate being on a bus for like hours. Best for cities would be public transits. We talked about trains, the subway in New York is a great example. Best for islands and coasts, again, ferries, guys. It's funny, you think this is kind of a duh thing, but I had a lot of people when we were going to Amalfi that were kind of inquiring about trains in the Amalfi Coast. And it's like, well, I mean, there's trains. It's easy to get around, but you want to do that in other parts of Italy where you don't have the option to just take a 20-minute ferry and then you can get coastal views of the entire Amalfi Coast. So, real examples, we've mentioned some, but would be trains usually beat flights in under 4 hours. For the U.S., flights are cars because we're very spread out here. Trains are limited here except for like any corridor. And then Southeast Asia flights for long distances for sure. Then they also have trains and buses, a lot of buses. Again, like Mexico, a lot of buses. So, you got to do this research, you guys. And then again, islands, just like the coasts, islands and coasts would be ferries. And then again, short flights, like say if you're on islands like Hawaii, you're going to take a short flight to island hop. You could also take a boat. So, you have options there. And travel.
Yeah, Travel Brats Pro Move. Now, I talked about this in the story, but this is something that like is always going to be helpful. Google Maps. I mean, it's amazing. It gives you every single option. That's what I used for the train. That's what I use for, anything. It's good in any place that you go. Like when I've been in Belgium, when Sophia's been in Italy, like Google Maps will tell you every little thing. It'll tell you, okay, if you need to change from a train to a bus and then you walk for 5 minutes to get to this or that or anything like that. It'll also tell you about ferries and it will give you every amount of detail. It's the kind of thing where if you don't want to do a taxi or an Uber and you want to figure it out yourself, then Google Maps is going to be your best friend. And obviously, if you've rented a car, which, is its own expense. But sometimes, like Sophia said, I mean, you just want the ease of that and you don't want to deal with public transportation, whether it's because it is inconsistent or because you are kind of afraid of it, which I would say everyone should challenge themselves to dive into a public transportation experience, because once you click into it, it really is pretty straightforward. That's what I've
Yeah.
noticed about most of the cities and areas where I have taken public transportation. It makes sense, but you do kind of have to clock into a different kind of map. So anyway, that's kind of one of the pro moves. I don't know if Sophie, if you have any other
I
tips.
think it's so true. I mean, I loved trains. The only thing I would say is if you have overpacked, or say you haven't, but you've done a lot of shopping, bought a suitcase on the side of the street in Florence and filled it up, then you may not want to try and travel with like 2 to 3 pieces of luggage on trains, even first class in some of these trains, even if they're nice trains, because Italy, all the trains are beautiful. They're clean, they're nice, they bring you snacks on most of the levels, but sometimes you just can't fit your suitcase anywhere because there's a lot of other people too, and they have those small areas. So I would say, obviously, pack light. If you physically can't pack light or you've overpacked, I would say getting picked up by a car or renting a car is probably toward the end of your trip worth it, or like a ferry shuttle. I know we took a ferry shuttle out of Venice. Obviously, you can't take a car from Venice to the airport, but you know what I mean? So, and again, like Natalie said, couldn't say it better. Google Maps is your friend. I know AI is big. A lot of times we've talked about this on previous episodes. You cannot trust AI to do a correct route sometimes. So you always got to check on Google Maps. Again, with the cost too, if you're comparing times, costs, Google Maps will help you pick the least stressful option. We did that all over Italy with which train should we be doing. And then it'll take you straight to the train website where you need to book that direct train. So easy peasy. It's amazing we have it. I don't know how people used to do this without it. Used to plan travel. I guess that, that was the day and age of travel agents where they kind of had all that booked for you. But, if you're trying to do it yourself, it's a great way to do it. We've talked about ferries, we've talked about buses and cars and trains. So now on a smaller level, if you're just trying to get around the city and you're not necessarily traveling from country to country, or you're not traveling from across the ocean, you can do taxis. It's important to know, though, to research. Everybody's all into Uber, there's Lyft. Where am I going? Do they have Lyft? Do they even have Uber? If they have Uber, is it cheaper than taxis? Is it safer? Do that research. An example would just be in Italy, taxis were typically cheaper than Uber. So, but again, taxis, you can't just say taxi like you do in New York, and they don't stop for you. They're not allowed to stop. They'll get a fine and arrest if they stop in the middle of the street to pick up people. So different from the US. So again, it's just things to know. And I was just shocked that taxis were cheaper than Uber in Italy. So in New Zealand, renting a car would be so worth it. But flying commercial is also super easy. You don't even go through security to fly from Queenstown to Christchurch, which is pretty interesting to me. It's just you like pop on just like you're hopping on a bus. It's so quick, so easy. The airports are really nice and clean. So again, it's just doing that research, because if you do, you'll find those methods of transportation, and there'll be a lot of recommendations. Now, ferries too, even in the States, you have like you don't want to drive from Fort Myers to Key West. You can do things like the Key West Express. And again, we've talked about how some places they don't have Lyft, but they have Uber, and then you compare the prices with taxis. So that would be our main, just like surface level tips for how to get around like a local when you're traveling. Now we're going to talk about, when to visit certain places.
This is a big one, because the truest thing I can say is that travel at any time, anywhere is always going to be great, right? I mean, obviously there will be caveats to that. You're not going to necessarily go to a place that's going to be icy and snowy if you're wanting more of like a luxurious mountainy like hike situation. Like if I want to go to Colorado and I want that experience of the snow, then I know what time of year to go. But basically what I'm saying is sometimes you can't choose, and you're going somewhere for work, say, and you're just like, I want to explore. Then look up things to do at that time of year that are going to be great. But if you can decide and your vacation time is more flexible, then decide when to visit and when to avoid it. Like what are these things that you want to focus on based on weather, crowds, which is a huge one we talk about a lot. Like time of year isn't just about what it looks like, but also New England in the fall. I mean, we talk about Boston, like they are going to be Salem. Any of those areas in Massachusetts are going to be so packed in October. And so you have to be smart about, okay, if I want to experience it at this time of year, then I have the knowledge that it's going to be crowded and you
Right.
just deal with it. And that's
Yeah.
okay. But I guess, like, Sophia, what are some questions that would be good to ask yourself when you're planning based on when to visit?
Yeah, certainly. Okay, guys, do I care more about good weather or fewer crowds? Because, like Natalie said, sometimes you're just not going to be able to get both. Am I trying to save money or have a once in a lifetime experience? Again, something to think about. Sometimes it's worth the splurge on certain things. Certain, like we said, convenience, travel. Like maybe on this particular trip, I need to rent a car versus take a train. I remember being in Sirmione, which is on Lake Garda, Italy's biggest lake, and it was really hard to find a good train from there to Venice. And so it was like, you know what? We've taken trains this entire month, this entire trip. We're just going to get a car. Like, we're going to get a car to pick us up and drive us here. It's fine. Point is, the end of our trip, and we'd had a bunch of luggage, and it was just a convenience thing where we're like, we're going to splurge a little bit on this. Am I there for beaches, cities, skiing, wildlife festivals? Like you said, do your research. It's funny. This to me seems again like a duh thing, but some people don't realize when it's monsoon season, in Thailand, or when it like winter comes earlier. Like, example for me, Natalie, you hit Boston at the perfect time. I actually went early, and it was one of those things where there was a specific time my friend could go. But we went early to Boston, and it was slightly less crowded because it was at the beginning of October, but so it was great weather. But at the same time, we missed pretty much all of the fall foliage. So,
Mhm.
that's a bit of a downer. So you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons. Now, almost every destination fits to these categories. And we're going to talk a little bit about high season, mid season, and low season. So, now what we got for high season, girl?
So, high season is, of course, wherever you're going, it's going to be the best for the weather, the festivals, the peak vibes. But of course, the downside being the crowds and the money. I mean,
Expensive.
yeah, like if you're going at a time where it's high season, people are charging out the butt for things. So, example, most people go to Europe June through August. Of course, we in America, summers where a lot of people are off and more flexible. So that makes sense. And then think about like beachy areas like the Caribbean, the Bahamas, these kind of places are going to be really popular from December to April. So, and like ski towns. I mean, we talk about this with all of our different Colorado episodes. Wintertime, obviously, any time from like December to March, that's going to be peak time for ski towns. So that's what those kind of places look like in high season. But what about shoulder season?
Yeah, shoulder season's interesting. And real quick, just so you guys, we don't want to deter you from going to any ski towns in like the winter, because obviously that's when you ski. But there are certain blackout dates to avoid. And I say blackout dates as in if like I've got a season pass. A lot of my blackout dates for places are like President's Day, New Year's, St. Patrick's Day, things like that. So again, just look for those holidays. I mean, I know a lot of people have off time on those holidays, but if you can avoid not skiing on them, you really don't want to wait like an hour to get on the chairlift. It's just silly. And now, shoulder season. Okay. It's best for great weather, fewer crowds, and better prices. If you can travel during shoulder season, it's amazing. The downside, though, it's got limited events. Obviously, we talked about no more holidays. Slightly unpredictable weather as well. You just kind of have to be prepared. Cold days when it's supposed to be warm, or too hot days when it's supposed to be cold. Example of this in certain travel spots would be Europe. This would be April to May or September to October. I will say Italy in the summer sucks. Been there, done that. Don't ever want to do that again. It's so hot, and the crowds, honestly, I don't mind the heat because we live in Florida, but a lot of people do mind the heat. So there's that. But also just the crowds. Can't move, can't get a reservation anywhere. You can't do anything. We went in October last year, and it was absolutely beautiful. And it was like the tail end of the season. A lot of these places closed from like November to like March. And so it was just locals. It was locals. It was not crowded, and you didn't even have to make a reservation for half of the things. It was amazing. So that's great. Mexico would be May to November. I went at the tail end of the summer and there was just Mexicans on vacation. And you didn't have any of these annoying spring break, young kids or wild Americans. Again, not regular Americans. I love my people, but I also love my Mexican people because those are also my people. And it was just such a cool vibe to kind of culturally immerse myself and be like, I'm here on vacation with all the Mexicans in August. Like, this is so chill. So again, May to November in Mexico. Japan, late fall, post foliage. So like, if you want to see the foliage, if you want to see the cherry blossoms, yeah, it's going to be crowded, but you're going for what you're going for. And then that's going to give us the low season lowdown.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're focused on budget travel and going to quieter places, then low season is going to be your happy time. Of course, this is when weather risks and closures are more likely. I mean, a lot of these cities, tourism is one of their main ways of making money.
Yeah.
And so they will often still be open, but sometimes it's like, if nobody's around, does it make sense to be open? So you just kind of have to take the risk of knowing that some things might be closed. For example, and this obviously has no bearing on choice because it's weather based, but in Southeast Asia, monsoon season is huge. If you think about hurricane season in the Caribbean, like a lot of these cruises, they'll say, like, if you're cruising at a certain time, be aware that hurricanes are possible. And, in the Mediterranean, like wintertime, hey, you can go there in the wintertime, but it's not going to be ideal necessarily. So I think with some of these areas, they will change pretty dramatically depending on what time of year you go. And again, like Sophia said, in Italy, as with like a lot of the Greek islands, they'll close in the wintertime. So mountain towns will be dead in off season, which again, might be what you want. That might be exactly what you're looking for. National parks, which obviously do their best to stay open year round. Sometimes we'll have road closures that vary by the month, but quiet can be dreamy
Yeah, it can
or
be.
boring. It can be,
Or really boring.
it's like, again, to each his own. Like how you travel is your choice. So I would just say check the weather, look at what you're going into. Rainy season versus daily showers, humidity levels, heat extremes like Sophia was saying, Italy in the summer, even just like wind that can affect like the coast if you're going somewhere on the coast or if you're traveling by ferry or something like that. Example, like, checking the weather.
Yes, when I went to New Zealand, like, I love it. I tease my husband's mother. She's the best. She was telling us it's summer. It's summer. And she knows me, so she's like, don't overpack. I was like, well, we'll see, And we were going to Queenstown, which again is colder. It's in the mountains, and so I was like, well, I gotta pack at least a few winter things, even though it's summer because it's the mountains. And so I packed like a little winter suitcase and then like a big summer suitcase, like a winter carry on it, and it was like 40 degrees. And it was windy and it was cloudy. And I would tell her, and then it continued. Like there was maybe one day that it was in the 70s. And even when we went up and then up again, it was cold. And so I was teasing her. I was like, summer here is interesting, isn't it? And she's like, well, I should have checked the weather. So again, guys, not just checking like, oh, what's it going to be like next week? Check the average weather, for New Zealand in December 25th to January 5th or whatever. Sometimes it ends up being cold. You need to bring a coat. And again, layers are great. We've talked about, how to pack for that. You don't necessarily have to overpack. Just bring some layers. So if it gets chilly, you can throw them on. Pro move would just be searching also, is this destination worth visiting in this month? Because again, like we talked about Colorado, okay? Colorado is great year round. It just depends on what you want to do. In the summer, like Natalie said, it's a lot of the towns are dead, but hiking is so big there in the summer. But if you're not a hiker, don't go in the summer. If you're a skier, go in the winter. If you're not a skier, go in the summer. I mean, it's just, give or take. You'll get real traveler options, not just climate charts too. So that's great. Now, quick pro tip for you guys would be not just before your trip, but during your trip, monitor the weather, especially if you've got flights that could be affected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For example, I was in Colorado visiting my brother in January, and we had that big ice snowstorm come like up through the Northeast, and it hit like the top of Georgia. It ended up not being as bad as it was supposed to be, but Delta was canceling thousands of flights through Atlanta. And I was connecting from Denver to Atlanta back to Pensacola. And so I was like, I just don't want to like go to the airport Sunday, have my flight be canceled, me try to reschedule with the thousands of people that are trying to reschedule their flights. So I can't get on a flight Monday. I can't get on a flight Tuesday. So I said, I'm just going to move. They were doing free changes. So I just moved my flight to any flight on Monday. And then later that day, I read another thing that said through the 26th, it'll be affected. So I was like, oh, that's Monday. I was like, well, through what time on the Monday? Because my flight's on Monday. So then I just like I got sketched out again, and I went back, and it was still free to move. So I moved to Tuesday, and I was like, all right, I got to get home Tuesday. So I'm really hoping and praying that I get home Tuesday. But if I don't, it is what it is. But at least I did all that I could to make sure, and then it was totally fine. Like I got home Tuesday. I wasn't with the group of people on Sunday that had their flights canceled. That had to get back to a hotel or call their family members to come pick them back up from the airport, unpack, repack. I hate that kind of stuff. And again, sometimes if it happens, but to kind of prevent it, just do those little easy things. I think it took me 60 seconds to change my flight on Delta's website. It was so easy. I didn't have to call. I didn't have to wait on the line. So, things like that. And Natalie, you're one for crowds, girl, and events.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you are going to a place because of a festival or because of an event. But I think if you want to avoid those things, then that's another thing to look up is like, yeah, I mean, obviously we talk about popular times of year to go. That's going to tell you right there that there are going to be crowds. But often you don't know, like, are there holidays? Especially in Europe, there are so many different holidays that they take off that you might not realize. And so it's important to look up different events, festivals, holidays, even like we talked about with cruise ships, like what are the seasons for cruise ships and when should you go based on weather or when should you go based on when it's just like a lot of people aren't going, which for me is during the school year. Like cruises during the summer are more popular, but the better times of year are actually earlier in the year, like March. That's a perfect time to go on a cruise. People
Mm.
are in school. There's not a lot of people that are going out on these cruises. A city can feel very different depending on what time of year you are going. Like, for example, as we already mentioned, the cherry blossom season in Japan is quite an experience. And that's not going to be the case at other times of year. It's specific to the spring, summer holidays in Europe. Again, different festivals. I mean, Sophia is our festival girl. So she's obviously like focused on, oh, I want to go to this festival. But hey, sometimes you could go someplace and there's a festival going on and you're like, all right, I'm here. Like we're just going to be a part of this. But it's also really important to like compare prices. We talk about budget travel. What time of year is it going to be better to go if you don't want to spend a lot of money? Again, whether it's flights, like actually traveling there.
Yeah, and I will say I am a festival girl, and I don't know if I would again, this is part of the research. I don't know if I would actually want to go to Brazil during Carnival if it's too crazy for me or if I would, Again, those are things to know. And flights so important. So Nat, what you asked is your answer. There are multiple ways to look up for the best prices. And this isn't necessarily always the cheapest option, but kind of what I'm getting for my money. Google Flights, it's great. Use it. You can use their price graph and you can compare and you can even do it like per month. So Skyscanner, you can look at the whole month as well. Google Hotels, if you're looking at hotels, price trends, you can see that all on Google Hotels. And again, I would say that prices spike when demand is high. You guys, again, this may be a duh thing, but you'd be surprised at what some people do not know. So, when prices spike, demand's high, obviously. When prices are dipping, it's shoulder or low season. So you can tell that that's a sweet spot. Now, the best overall travel months in general, globally, again, so guys, take this with a grain of salt because that's a big statement for everywhere and everything for traveling, but April and May are great travel months. Natalie also said March. March is excellent because of weather. Just be careful with spring break if you're in the States. If
Oh
you're
yeah,
going
for
to
college spring break.
yeah, if you're going to like all inclusives or like Florida or, September, October is also excellent. We talked about how overseas in September, October is beautiful. We know the Northeast is gorgeous in the fall. Best for saving money, low season, obviously, just outside of peak winter. And again, peak winter for places is different. Peak winter for Colorado is going to be different than peak winter for Atlanta. Like they're going to shift by months. So again, just know that, best for iconic places would be peak season. So, you can book early and embrace crowds. I will say that, like, don't let us deter you if you're like, man, I'll never get to go to New Zealand because I only have Christmas off and I want to go there for 2 weeks. And I never get to have 2 weeks off any other time of the year. I went there during peak season. And honestly, that particular year, it really wasn't bad. And I went to one of the most touristy towns because it's so gorgeous. It's Queenstown. And we didn't feel like restaurants were too crowded. We didn't feel like streets were too crowded. So, it may depend. But again, on that particular trip, we booked flights 9 months in advance. I booked pretty much all our excursions at least 6 months in advance because it was peak season. Yeah. And then I remember there was a restaurant we really wanted to go to that it wouldn't let me book over like 3 months in advance. Then when I went back to it like 2 months away, it was booked. And so you guys just have to like stay on it. Yeah. You have to stay on it. Natalie, give us some more examples of how this plays out, darling.
Yeah. So best weather in Paris, gay Paris, which what a beautiful city at any time of year. But the best weather is going to be May to June as well as September. And those typically avoid like the worst parts of the crowds for the summer. But you're going to find the best prices January and February. Of course, it's after the holiday season, so it's definitely not going to be as expensive. Now, a lot of people say that the best vibes in Paris happen during April and October. I would say that for the most part, any city that has like a true spring or a true fall, that will probably be the case, that April and October will be like really just like immaculate. And not just weather-wise, but definitely, as Sophia and I like to say, for the vibes. But as I said, avoiding July and August, that's when the tourists are really swarming and the locals leave. So if you want a local experience, then going at a time that's not as hot, literally, and also crowd-wise, that's a good time. Now, an example for a place like Thailand, which neither of us have been to, is best weather, November and February, like November through February, rather. I mean, this is on the opposite end of the world. So the warm weather is the warmest and best weather is happening at a different time. And that's ideal for us because we want to avoid the cold.
Yes, and that's something to pay attention to, too. I mean, again, maybe not a duh thing for a lot of people. I forgot that, when we started planning New Zealand, that, it's summer down under, And so even though I brought winter things, it wasn't as obviously as cold as it was in the States in the winter. So don't forget to look up what season it is wherever you're going based on where they are around the equator.
Yeah. Thailand is a place that probably like a lot of places in Southeast Asia will have warmer weather pretty consistently. But yeah, there are definitely best times to go. The cheapest time to go to Thailand is September and October, but the best balance of all of these things is definitely in November. So yeah, little spots like that. And of course, we are full of tips like this for all different cities. Like if you're just like, hey, I don't want to go to Paris or Thailand, which to me, I'm like, both places are great. Yeah, it's like whatever you look up, like places like this, you're going to find the best seasons for every city.
Yes, and to encompass all the things we've discussed, you guys, quick Travel Brat shortcut and just to live by, rules to live by. The actual best time to go is really when weather works for your plans and your schedule. Prices don't make you cry, okay? Maybe a little splurge here and there, but don't make you cry. And crowds do not ruin your vibe, okay? Some people are super claustrophobic and some people can just do crowds. So guys, we hope you enjoyed this. We wanted to talk a little bit about travel tips and logistics, but I wanted to let you guys know that it's totally possible to travel when your schedule permits it. So guys, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. We're going to come on and talk more about our travel tips for you guys throughout the year. And just let us know if you have any questions. And we just wish you the best year and continued success in whatever you're doing, especially your travels. And we'll catch you on the next Travel Brat Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, it's your Travel Brat Nat. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred listening platform. We also love reviews, so feel free to leave us a Google review or a review wherever you listen.